Hi, my name is Sue, and I'm making homemade buns. This recipe makes 9 buns from 3½ cups unbleached white flour combined with rye flour. Let's get started. I'm going to make homemade buns. I'll use 2 cups of unbleached white flour combined with 1½ cups of rye flour. And I'll stir those together. I'll set the oven temperature at 200 degrees for now. I'll turn the oven off when my dough is ready to rise next to the open oven door with the warm oven air flowing over the bowl. This will allow the bread to rise. I'll cover a baking sheet with parchment paper, but you can grease the sheet as well instead of using the parchment paper. Here are the rest of the ingredients. 2 packages of active dry yeast, such as Fleischmann's Rapid Rise Instant, 1/4 cup of sugar. I use raw sugar, but you can use honey instead. 1/3 cup of oil. I use olive oil. I have 1½ cups of milk, heated for 1½ minutes. 1 teaspoon of salt. And lastly, an egg. Now I'm going to add the ingredients that needs to be combined with the yeast. 1 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of sugar. I use raw sugar, but you can use any kind. 1/3 cup oil. And I'll just stir these together. And I'll sprinkle in 2 packages of yeast. And gently stir them in. Now the yeast needs to bloom. In this proofing process, it needs a warm environment. So I set my bowl in a sink of warm water. Now this needs to bloom or proof for 15 minutes. While the yeast is proofing, I'm going to add my teaspoon of salt to the flour and combine it. I don't add the salt to the yeast mixture because it prevents the blooming process from giving the yeast a good rise. The yeast has bloomed. It's risen with the milk, the oil, and the sugar. I'm going to add an egg. Now I'm going to start spooning in the flour. A little bit at the time. And I've got the dough hooks on my electric mixer. I'll plug it in. I'm just going to put it on power level 1 and mix the egg and the flour. I just keep adding the flour a little bit at a time. I tend to stir it in until it's mixed enough that I can beat it without flour flying out of the bowl. The mixture gets quite thick. Now I'm ready to form the dough into a ball and let it rise in a warm oven. Now the dough is ready to rise. I just set a tea towel on top and I set it on pot holders in the open oven. My oven has been preheated to 200 degrees. I've turned that temperature off, and so there's warm air flowing against the bowl. The dough will rise for 15 minutes, and then I punch it down. I've removed the dough from the open oven, and I'm going to remove the tea towel, and I'm going to punch it down. This was the first rise, and now I'm going to knead it and form it into buns. Okay, you can knead the whole big mass, but when you're making buns, you can actually slice the dough up and knead each bun at a time. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm kneading this bun, and it's no longer sticky, so it's ready to go on the baking sheet. Okay, so I've got the buns. I made 9 buns with this recipe, and now I'm going to set the temperature to 400. And while the oven is heating up, the buns will rise a little more. The buns will rise for about 15 minutes. And the buns have risen for 15 minutes, and the timer is about to go off. I've microwaved some butter to place on top of the buns. And I just gently spoon it on to give the buns a nice sheen and coating. You can use oil. Now with the butter on the buns, you can sprinkle some flax seeds on them, and the seeds should stick. Bake in the center of the oven. The temperature again is 400 degrees. Okay, I'm setting the timer for 12 minutes, and I'll check to see if the buns are ready, and if they are, great. If not, I'll leave them for a full 15 minutes. And the buns cooked for 15 minutes total.